morning, everybody. It's Jean here, Jean Truelove from Truelove Quilts for You. I'm working on my Dear Jean quilt. Jean's Block Party 2021. If you're following along, we are making a sampler quilt. Again, however you want to make your blocks, however you want to put your blocks together, in whatever setting, you have come to the conclusion now in your own mind. If you're just joining and just, oh, Maxwell. Maxwell's sneezing in the background. If you're just joining in, you can go back to the introductory videos on my playlist, Jean's Block Party 2021, to see exactly what we are doing or not, whatever it is that you want to do with your blocks that we're making. Right for now, I'm teaching beginners, beginner quilters or beginner, not sewers, but beginner quilters, how to make one block a week, except in block number 7, we were making multiples because I have a certain pattern that I'm following loosely. It is my idea. Who knows at the end of the day? And quite a few of you probably are following along with what I'm doing, which is a medallion quilt, which is something in the middle, and then a big block in the middle, and then borders and blocks all around it. Hence the reason a sampler quilt, we're making a sample of each block. So far, I'm up to block number 9. If a lot of people are making 1 or 2 of each block or multiples to get their quilting skills down. This week, we are working on this block. These are called Flying Geese. This is a Flying Geese block. I always have trouble. Somebody, please tell me, is this the sky and these are the wings? Or this the goose and this the sky, or something like that. I forget what it is, but it's called a Flying Geese block. My back looks just as good as my front. Oh, somebody said that weeks and weeks ago. You always say your back looks as good as your front. I hope so. So this is the block. Now what I have done, and I'm gonna share that with you. What I've done, I've used 2 different fabrics here, but you don't have to use 2 different fabrics. They're very subtle. These are my K facet fabrics. Believe it or not, those are 2 different fabrics. This has more pink in it, this has more blue in it, and then I used my grand white neutral. Now, this week, the way I'm giving you cutting instructions, you're making 2. You're making 2 Flying Geese blocks, exactly the same. Oh, there's my husband. You're making 2 Flying Geese blocks exactly the same because I think it's a good exercise that you make the 2 blocks as I show you, because it can be a little bit tricky not cutting off that point there and keeping up here and here and here our 1/4 inch seam. It's a little bit, it's not hard, and I show you how to do it exactly. But even the most experienced of quilters will know that a Flying Geese made the traditional way. This is made the traditional way. As we go along, I'm going to be showing you a more, like I did with our 9 patches, an easier multiple way to make Flying Geese. But right now, we're making 2 Flying Geese units, okay? The same fabric. I've used 2 different fabrics. Now, why I'm saying that is, oh, here we go, sorry. I put it over on my ironing board. This is what you are going to be making up. This is what you are going to be doing. You are going to be using the 2 different fabrics, okay? And you're going to be getting a high contrast or a contrast of 2 different blocks out of my 1 cutting instructions. I just change it up slightly and I use 1 other fabric, okay? For my quilt, for my block that's going into my quilt, I used another fabric. But again, I show you what I did with that. But for you guys, you're going to pull 2 fabrics and you're going to end up with these 2 blocks according to my cutting instructions, okay? And you're making your 2 blocks to practice really good to get this right. If you get it right the first time, then you can really perfect it the second time. It's a little bit tricky. Again, we are working with a biased edge here and a biased edge here on all of them. Again, the trick is to stabilize your fabric, press it. Maybe you want to use a little bit of starch. It's very important that you cut these squares that you cut then in half to make your half square triangles perfect. It's very, very important that these are cut, or else this achieve your 1/4 inch here and your 1/4 inch here, which obviously is your 1/4 inch seam, to not cut off your point, if you cut it off. And if you don't have a ta-da moment, don't worry about it. You can fudge it in the back end. I shouldn't say that, but it's okay. Don't stress about it. But again, it's a skill that, you know, to not cut off the points, to make a block nice. It's a skill that experienced or advanced beginners want to get under your belt. So you do it right. So I show you exactly how you achieve your 1/4 inch. You don't have it down here because we haven't put this into a block yet, right? But you have your 1/4 inch here and here and here. So you're going to be using 2 different fabrics. I just happen to use 3. I just happen to use 3 different fabrics. I changed it up. You can't really see it, but again, as you can see, I have a bit of a contrast to my, I think all along, I keep saying that, and I don't want to be beating a dead horse, is you need contrast in your quilt. You want your blocks to pop or not. You might want to have just more of a an all over look. But for now, we just want to have a little bit of contrast because you're trying to see these triangles. Now, again, this is way down the road. I believe I'm going to be making a border, bordering my medallion, bordering my 9 patches, bordering my blocks. I think I'm going to be making a border of flying geese all the way around one of my building squares. My building quilt from the inside out, my Dresden plate to the out. I will be making them smaller and most probably en masse. Again, like we did our 9 patches. We've made quite a few of them. I'm going to be making flying geese smaller. I think I'm going to be showing you how I'm going to be making 4 inch. This again is a 6.5 inch unfinished, 6 inch finished flying geese. But again, I will be making flying geese to go all the way around my thing, but smaller. So that's to come. Right now, this week, you're concentrating on your 1/4 inch seam, and it's almost a scant quarter, because you don't want to clip off this point here, and you want to have, I didn't have it quite there, as you can see. It's just slightly, not 1/4 of an inch. It's not quite. Again, it's fine here, and it's fine on my other one, and it's fine here. But this one I had a little bit of a difficult time. And again, that's because I think my squares, my initial squares, were cut just a smidgen too small. You want to be very careful with this unit here that you're cutting, your neutrals for your wings or your geese or whatever it is. So that's block number 9. I hope you enjoy this. We're coming along with our quilt. I'm going to be putting it sort of together loosely, maybe on a design board, like I said last week somehow, all of my blocks, and see what we have and to see what we're actually making, because it is a bit of a mystery, or maybe you've been putting your blocks together and you know. But so this is block number 9, flying geese. Be careful so you get these 1/4 inch seams right. And yeah, we are flying away. All right, folks. Thanks a lot. See ya. So block number 9, my sample blocks, this is what this cutting instruction makes. As I was saying in the beginning, we are going to be making quite a few flying geese blocks. We're going to be making them smaller, and we most probably are going to be making them en masse to go around a border of my medallion when we get there, weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks away. But I want you to learn how to make a larger flying geese. The way I've constructed this is because a flying geese can be a little bit tricky trying to get your points here, your 1/4 inch on each side and on the top. It can be a little bit tricky. So I think this cutting method is a good way to practice. You may end up with 2 perfect blocks that would be awesome in your quilt, your 6.5 inch, 6 inch finished blocks. That's how we're working with this right now, these cutting instructions. Now, this block and this unit and this cutting instruction, fabric A and fabric B, will end up looking like this. Okay, now I'm okay with that. I made them, but for me to change it up, because I have more material, I'm going to be, quote, wasting a little bit, but I'm going to add another fabric A, okay? It's another pattern. But I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with this fabric to change up my blocks. I'm going to have one of fabric A here, and then I'm going to have my alternative fabric A. That's what I should have put. It's cut exactly like this one. So I'll have two separate prints in my two blocks. But for now, for you people to make two identical blocks with two contrasting fabrics, okay, this is my cutting instructions here. You're going to be wanting one fabric A. You're going to be cutting one 7 1/4 inch square, okay, 7 1/4 inch square. You might need, I have a large ruler here, and here's my 7 and then my 1/4 inch, and I come down here, and that's how I made my 7 1/4 inch square. If not, you can measure it on your mat, or you can measure it with your rulers and cut one 7 1/4 inch square. From my fabric B, again, this is high contrast, I am cutting 4 3 7/8 inch. Now you refer back to what video? What block was block number 5? We're cutting these in half. We're making the triangles out of the 3 7/8. If you forget where that is on your ruler, go back to block number 5. Our half square triangles we were making. This, we're just making the triangle pieces, okay? We're cutting these in half. So that's our cutting instructions to make two blocks with the two different fabrics, okay? This is a good block, like I said, to experiment, to get your points, so your points are not cut off when they're put in the seams. Now again, I'm going to be using my two different fabrics, so my blocks will have two different fabrics in them. And I'll have a little bit left over. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we actually cut our fabrics, okay? We are going to cut our fabric A. I'm going to line it up on my mat. We're going to be cutting this twice. We're going to be cutting it on the diagonal, there, down to there. And again, I put the ruler not right on the dot, not right on the point. I put it one little hair in, to allow for the blade to make a nice cut. Slowly cut that in half. Close that. Now my camera's in the way. I would have done this, but I'm going to shift it like this. Now I'm going to scratch them right together, perfectly. And then I'm going to cut again, diagonal to diagonal. They're nice and scratched together. They're perfect. One thread in from that corner to corner, and I'm going to make a second cut. Okay? And there are my 4 triangle bits. So I'm going to be using 2 of these triangle bits. And I'm going to be, and actually since it's a large print, I'm going to figure out which prints I want. So for now, I'm just going to put them aside. And then I have 4 of them. I am going to have a few left over, but that's okay for me. Or if you have extra fabric, you can change it up a bit. Again, I'm cutting diagonal to diagonal on my 7 1/4 inch square. Take your time doing this. And then shift it. Now there obviously would be a way to cut your triangles, but sometimes you'd need a template, or you'd need measurements, and all sorts of ways to do it. This is easier cutting it from a larger piece of fabric. So I'm putting them there. Again, that's my alternative. Now I'm just going to scratch 2 and 2 together. Maybe I can do 4. I think I can do actually 4, because I cut these pretty good. And again, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to scratch them perfectly together, and I'm going to cut them right from corner to corner, again on the diagonal. And there I end up with 8 triangles. Now, what we're going to do, get my design board here. What I'm going to do, my design board, I'm going to lay out my blocks, okay? Here's my test block right there, okay? So I'm going to lay out my block because I have chosen that the fact that I like, I'm going to change these up. I'm going to put one there of my pretty print, and then I'm going to put one there, like that. This is making one block, and then I'm going to just put my triangles on how they would look on my block. Okay? So here is what my one block will look like, and then I'm going to do the opposite. I'll do this right now for me. And then also you could do this for you too, because if you're going to be making 2, so I'm going to grab this one, and let me see, I like that one, and as you see I have some left over. I could actually make a third one. But I like that. Is there enough pink in that one? I think I like this one, has lots more pink. There we go. And then, so your fabric with my first cutting instructions these will be exactly the same. So there are our lovely blocks on our design board. Now we have to go sew them together. Now, just like we did block number 5, we are working with a biased edge. Nothing to be frightened of though, because you're just leaving this stationary, you're just not messing about with it. But the trick with this block here, with a Flying Geese, is this edge here is on the bias and this edge here is on the bias. But what we're going to do is we're going to flip over, you're going to see it visually, your square, you're going to flip this over so our long edges are together. Okay, our long edges are together and our bottom edge is together. Okay, our bottom edge, keep this one over there, our bottom edge matches up perfectly. Now what happens again? You have a 1/4 of an inch little dog ear, remember? So I'm going to put my needle right down in that little point right there, or it goes like this. I'm going to put my needle down. I'm going to scratch these together, make sure my edge is real nice and square and the bottom is nice and square, and I'm going to stitch a perfect 1/4 of an inch. Now I'm going to leave my needle down because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and I'm going to chain piece. I'll do one block at a time, but I'll chain piece these 2 units. Again, here's my block, my right hand block, and I'm going to put the pretty side over, this long pretty side, making sure this line is up, that's lined up there, and it's lined up on the bottom here. It's lined up here, and I have this 1/4 inch. Now I'm going to lift my presser foot, and my needle goes right into that little edge right there. And then right off, pinch. Now, because we've chain pieced them, they have that little piece of thread, okay? Now, very important at this point, we have our 2 blocks, very, very important that I'm going to just gently, ever so gently, roll this to the dark side. It seems like it wants to go that way, but I am going to roll it over to the dark side because I want this to sort of stick out. Okay, I'm not pulling that, I'm not pulling it real hard, I'm just pulling that, and then I'm just going to just gently finger press that. Okay, now I have these 2 pieces here. So I'm going to take, and then this is how our block's going to end up, right? So put this aside for a moment, put that one aside. So I'm going to bring this down, and you need this seam. You can by all means go over and iron it. You need this to be out. You can't be sewing it like that. You need this to look just like that. So again, long edge to long edge, and then the bottom edge, okay? And as you see, we have all this up here, which is good, which is excellent. So come in a 1/4 of an inch, come in a 1/4 of an inch and start. Go slowly, no pulling it. And we've rolled that seam going that way, not stretched anything, but as you can see, my needle's going to go right to that intersection right there. And then we'll see what it makes when I take it off my machine. Put my needle down, my presser foot up, and I'm just going to grab this one and I'm going to do the exact thing. I'm going to finger press that over gently, put it in front of me like this. Take this one long edge to long edge, and very important, keep our bottom edges real nice and straight. You're not hanging this edge over 1/4 of an inch. This goes point to point, point to point. This edge is hanging over, okay? His edge is hanging over there. So I'm going to carefully place that right under my presser foot, 1/4 of an inch, very slowly. And I'm coming up to this intersection right here, and I'm going to go right off. Pinch, because you don't want to distort it, and cut these apart. Now, when I pull this up, I have a perfect 1/4 of an inch. There's my point. So again, remember when we put this block, this unit into our block, we need a 1/4 of an inch so we don't cut off that point. So if you've pressed it, if you've cut it and you've sewn it and then you were going to iron that real well, remember you have 2 dog ears down here. Don't worry about that right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my ironing board and I'm going to press these seams to the dark, to the inside, and then I can just trim off this dog ear. I can do that right now. I can trim off that dog ear and I can trim off that dog ear. So my seams just go right to the inside, and I'm going to, so sort of just as they've come off my my sewing machine here, I'm going to very carefully set that seam. And then because I didn't set the other seam, I'm just going to set that like that. And then with I'm going to just give it a little bit of a spray. And then just carefully nudging that seam inside, both sides. I'm going to just carefully nudge that seam to the inside. That's looking pretty good, and as you can see, my inside looks as good as my outside. Okay, I'm going to do the exact same thing to this. I'm going to set these seams. Now I'm going to be showing you later on how we're going to be making multiple Flying Geese units, but for now I just want you to get used to making, it's a good thing to make the 2 of them, how to make a standard Flying Geese. My seams are inside here. I push to the inside. And there we go. And again, I like that. There's my 1/4 inch because we're going to need that when we put our Flying Geese together. We're going to need that 1/4 inch seam. So as you can see on my example, my point is perfect there, and I have the 1/4 inch up there. I've taken this from my ironing board, and what I'm going to do is, being very aware of that 1/4 inch seam, I'm going to flip this top one over, pretty sides together, and we don't have to worry about it being in the middle, our points being in the middle, because we've cut it perfectly. But you do have to worry about this bottom seam here, this point here. So what I do is, as you saw, I flip this over, but I'm going to stitch it. I'm going to stitch it on the side where the point is, so I can see where I have to, so I don't knock that point off. It's right there. It is pretty good. It's pretty much a 1/4 of an inch. But I find if I stitch it This way I'm not stitching blind. Now when you're stitching, you must realize that your needle and your thread take up a couple threads. And that's the difference between cutting a point off and not. So you can feel it, but you don't want to stitch on top of it. You just want to stitch sort of right, you don't want to stitch right on the point, thinking, oh, because you have to allow for the turn of your fabric. So you just stitch sort of, just a little bit above it, just a slight hair above it, and then right off. So you see I have not trimmed off my dog ears. Will, if it's turned out well. Now this is the testing. And there is my point right there. Oh, it's lovely. Very, very nice. It turned out really, really well. Now, by all means, I can trim off these dog ears. Just trim them up. I'll be trimming them up anyway when I go to do my block. So I'm not going to go over to my ironing board yet. I'm going to set that seam. Let me trim off the ones in here. Don't need these now. And then it's a little bit skewed, but I'll see if this measures 6.5. Looks pretty good to me. Now I'm just going to do these right now, and I'll be back. Okay, now let me see if I have 2 ta-da moments. Do I have 2 ta-da moments? I don't know. It's just slightly large on the top there, on that one. And then, what is the most important thing that we're doing here? We are trying to keep and have a perfect 1/4 of an inch. So that one, so as you see here, there's my 1/4 of an inch, there's my 1/4 of an inch, and there's my 1/4 of an inch. And then my 1/4 of an inch was perfect, so my point did not get cut off. So there's one, pretty good. So I see I have a 1/4 of an inch. I just want to square this up a little bit. Oops. And this is pretty good, just a few little threads over here. And there, and then down on this side. But there are 2 ta-da moments. 6.5 inch Flying Geese. And as you can see, I just changed it up. It doesn't look drastic, but these are another print. So again, I have a few little prints left over that I could continue making my Flying Geese. So so you guys will be making 2 of the same, like that. But as you can see, look at this, how our Flying Geese are coming together. And again, when you're putting Flying Geese together, they don't have to be all in a row. They could go that way. To make a 12.5 inch block, you can do it all different. You can configure Flying Geese all different ways. Make a pretty lovely little pillow. If you make them in different colorways, you can do something like that. You can do something like that. Flying Geese are very, very versatile. As you can see, just changed it up with a few. I mean, obviously these don't go together, but just changed the configuration. And there we have what you'll have made are 2 lovely Flying Geese blocks. These are my K-Facet fabrics. So I hope you enjoyed that, folks. Again, yeah, block number 9. Yeah, it's sweet. Lovely. All right, folks. See ya. Bye.